trip, and hopefully maybe some of you might want to go on that with us. So be praying about that. But it's always good to have missionaries here. It's good to hear about the work that's being done. There's a lot of good things happening in Costa Rica. So I'll pray here in a moment. Right outside on that table by the mission wall, there's information about our Oaxaca trip, but there's also this survey. How many got the survey in email this week? How many of you filled it out? All of you? No? If you wouldn't mind just helping us do that. You might think the questions are weird and all that, but just play along, answer honestly. It all has a purpose to it. But if you didn't get that on email, we do have some hard copies back there on that table. And if you could just fill it out before you leave, just takes a few minutes, and give it to me or Brother Greg, one of the staff here, Scott, and we'll make sure to take care of that. You don't have to put your name or anything. It's completely anonymous. But if you say anything bad about us, we will find you. Okay? just saying. Okay, so let me pray, and then I'm just going to bring up Brother Zerbe, and he will take the rest of the time. Father, I just thank you for missions. I thank you for things happening all around this world for the cause of Jesus Christ, the gospel being spread. Thank you for everything that's taking place in Costa Rica. I pray that you would be with Brother Zerbe and the remainder of his trip here in the States. He just had a short trip here. Be with his wonderful wife there back in Costa Rica. And I just pray that we would be excited about what's going on there in Costa Rica and find out how we can even be a greater part of it. So, Lord, bless him tonight. Use him to motivate us, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. Brother Zerbe.
Well, good evening. Good to be back in this part of the world. I'm kind of getting freezing to death, cold and all this stuff, because Costa Rica doesn't ever get this chilly. But anyway, God bless you folks for showing up tonight. Hard to know where to start because I have a lot to do, but there's a real blessing in what's happening in Costa Rica. Let's start over here by reading a passage of Scripture in Ecclesiastes. If you turn there for just a second. Ecclesiastes chapter 11. Yeah, okay. Chapter 11 and verse 4. He that observeth the wind shall not sow, and he that regardeth the clouds shall not reap. What that wise man is saying here in this portion of Scripture is, you wait for everything to be perfect in your life, you'll never get nothing done. We live in a fallen world, and you have two competitive forces, let's say, in the world. You have the Lord God of heaven, the sovereign part of the universe, who's in control of everything, but he allows Satan to be here with us these days. And so these two entities in our lives continue to work every day. But he that looks at only the bad side of things, he that observeth the wind and shall not sow, and he that regardeth the clouds shall not reap. We wait for everything to be absolutely perfect in our Christian life. We will not progress, and missionary work will not get done. My mom and dad were missionaries in Liberia, West Africa, for about 30 years. I went over there when I was 2 years old with them, and I spent 17 years there total time. My dad was the first one who introduced an airplane into the ministry in Africa over there. And then when I went over there, right after Bible college in 1972, I basically took his place and taught in the 4-year Bible college that he founded, and I flew the airplane that he flew, and getting all those different missionaries around, Bible school students, flown around the country to preach the gospel and so on. And then in 1980, They had a revolution, and they're still suffering from that revolution till this day. Set that whole country probably 200 years back, because when you have 30 years of civil war, you have a real problem on your hands as far as the country being developed. Till this day, there's no electricity in the capital city, and there's no garbage pickup. It's just a horrible, horrible situation in Liberia, West Africa. It's about the third or fourth poorest country in the world. And, but I made a lot of friends, because when I was flying an airplane over there, I got around the whole country. There's 32 different languages and 32 different tribes in that country of Liberia, where I grew up. And then in 1980, the U.S. ambassador called me to his office and said, "I understand you're the pilot for all these missionaries here." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I recommend that all you guys get out of this country as fast as you can. We're going to have a coup or something bad happen here, and your lives will probably not be worth much if you hang around." We had a great big meeting with all the missionary men on one mission station. I won't take time to tell you about that whole meeting, but the upshot of it was 3 of the men decided to stay, and all the rest of the missionaries, somewhere around 35 of them, decided that it was time to leave. The U.S. ambassador told us we should get out of the country. And so we arranged a flight schedule to get them all out. Got them all out except those 3. And 2 weeks later, the whole thing broke loose. There was a big revolution, and all those three missionaries got killed. So we came to the States, and my uncle in Montana gave us an airplane to use for the mission field. It was a perfect airplane for the mission field, a Cessna 185. When that happened, we had our missionary support up for the most part, and a brand new airplane in our possession. So we got invited to go to 5 different areas in the world, and wound up going to Alaska, because a missionary there had wrecked his plane and had almost lost his life and was going to lose his ministry where he was, and we went there to take his place. So we've been in Alaska 36 years, and then I'll tell you the story from there as we go along through the night. What I'd like to do right now, though, is show you just quickly, I don't know, it's 5 or 6 minute or something, thing on the screen that give you an idea about the ministry in Costa Rica now. So we had a ministry in Liberia. My dad had a ministry there for almost 30 years. My wife and I were there 4 years before we got booted out of the country. And then we've been in Alaska for 36 years, and now we're in Costa Rica, and more about that ministry in just a moment. Gentlemen, is there a way to show that film? And I'll explain it as we go along. Is there a way to start this thing at the beginning? Shows us landing an airplane here in the middle of the Quebecar Indians. The Indians are a tribe of Indians. They say there's about 12,000 of them. They're in the rainforest part of Costa Rica, and they're 7 days' walk from the nearest road. So I got an airplane and flew over there and found out, landed in this horse pasture thing here, and the horses all around the airplane. It's a little bit dangerous to fly in there because you never know when a dumb horse is going to run in front of you. So you have to buzz the field and get rid of the horses first before you can land the airplane there. But what takes 7 days to walk in there, hard walking, I can fly there in 25 minutes. So now missionary work is viable. There's very few missionaries who are going to walk 7 days in and then have to walk 7 days back out if they have a sick child or something like that. It's just almost impossible for a white man to do that kind of thing. So they need air support big time. And so now they've got it. Let's see if this thing will play from the start. Maybe that's where it starts. I just put this thing on a jump drive. We'll just see if it continues from here. This is landing for the first time in this horse pasture at this place. A gentleman in Alaska donated this airplane for this ministry to the Quebecer Indians, and I flew this airplane from Alaska down to Costa Rica. And this is the first time that we landed in this jungle airstrip, which is also a horse pasture. Okay. We just put this thing from a DVD to a jump drive, so maybe it's not going to work. I don't know. The technological age in which we live, I'm deficient in that. I don't understand it. In fact, I really don't want to understand it. Just one of those old timers that doesn't, you know, the rest of the thing before was playing just perfectly. Now, since we put it on the jump drive, it's not playing right. So we'll just have to quit. We'll just have to mess, and I'll just explain what it was. I had a 36 years flying for missionaries, and we had a university ministry in Alaska, and we built one church to completion in Fairbanks, Alaska, and then we moved to a village called Manly Hot Springs, and we were establishing a work in that village, fly to it on Sunday. And then in that time frame, flying over, there was no Eskimo missionaries in Alaska at all when I first went there with a plane. And so when the missionaries found out that there was a way to get to the Eskimos and back again, all of a sudden the missionaries started coming out of the woodwork. And so I started flying them to the Eskimo land. But Eskimos are so far away. Alaska is such a huge state. It takes 4.5 hours or something like that, one way to fly to most of these Eskimo villages. They're on the coastline of Alaska, way on the west coast. And so once you get past the halfway point with an airplane, because we have 5 hours of fuel, once you get past the halfway point, if the weather is fogged in up there on the coast, then you're a dead duck because you don't have enough gas to get back home. There's no landing strips or roads to land on in between, and you're not going to land on in Eskimo land because it's all fogged in and I can't see from here to that speaker. So I was looking for a place to land about halfway, and I found such a place. It was a gold mine in the mountains that was not too far off my track where I would fly. And so I landed there one time, and these gold miners are weird people, some of them are pretty straightforward Americans, but others of them are real weird, and they just about soon bury you because you landed there. This guy was real friendly, but I found out right away he was a Jehovah's Witness fella. And, but he was friendly enough. He said, no, you don't have to put a tent up underneath the wing of your plane. You come stay in one of our cabins and eat our food and all that stuff. And I said, well, that's fine. I really appreciate that. And I told him I could run any of his pieces. I could run his D9 Caterpillar or his front end loader or his backhoe or a diesel mechanic. I could overhaul some of his stuff. We're just, in other words, to be handyman around there while I'm waiting out bad weather in Eskimo land. Oh, great. So in talking with him, I found out he was a big shot in the Jehovah's Witness Church in Fairbanks, where we lived. And so I'm just asking him. I pretty much know what the Jehovah's Witnesses are like anyway. But I asked him, I said, what would you say makes Jehovah's Witnesses a little bit different than other, like Presbyterians, Lutherans, Methodists, Baptists, and all that? He thought for a while, and he said, well, we believe God's in control of everything. I said, well, I believe that too, but can you tell me how does that work in practical Christian living in your church? He said, well, he thought for a good long while. He said, well, we don't send our boys to war because, he said, when you do that, you're trying to change the outcome of another nation. And he said, God puts kings up and he puts kings down, and so therefore we don't go to war. So I said, I thought about that for a while, and I said, do you remember the story of David and Goliath? He said, yeah. I said, well, Goliath in that particular instance is the enemy number one of God's people and blaspheming God's name and so on. He's in God's he's in God's periscope at that moment. So I said, if he is in God's face, Goliath, what in the world is David doing in the scene? If God's in control of everything, why does he need David? What this guy was telling me, the Jehovah's Witness guy, is that God's in charge of everything and there's no human responsibility in the world. God takes care of everything. So I said, but David came along, and when David came along, he picked up about 5 smooth stones, and he went over there. His prayer was, I said, when he was facing Goliath, was probably something like this: Lord, please direct this rock that I'm about to throw at that Goliath. Let me hit him in the forehead and at least knock him unconscious so I can cut his head off. So he did that. He threw the rock and it went straight to the guy's forehead, and he cut his head off, and then he drug his head to Jerusalem and stuck it on the post just to make a point. So I said, yes, God's in control of human affairs, but he uses people to accomplish his doings here on this earth. So he didn't know what to say to all that, and but he was still my friend somehow. I thought he won't want me to land my airplane here no more, but 25 years passed, and I never had to stop there to wait out bad weather. And either weather was too bad to start out in Fairbanks, or it was good enough I could keep going. And so 25 years passed, and then here comes a Chinaman. Now this Chinese fellow, I won't tell you his last name, it's kind of weird. His English first name was Tony. And so Tony is a Chinaman that was born in China, raised in Costa Rica. Now this is all key stuff. Had he not been raised in Costa Rica, I wouldn't be standing here today telling you about this thing. Tony is raised in Costa Rica, went to school there, all his relatives lived there. And he then became a U.S. citizen, got a doctor's degree in petroleum engineering, and went to work for Exxon all over the world. He travels all over the world doing oil stuff. Now he doesn't work for Exxon anymore, but he cannot own a private gold mine in his own country, China, where he was born. And Costa Rica doesn't allow for gold mining because they want the tourists to enjoy all the landscape, no big holes dug in the ground. So Tony comes to Alaska to buy a couple of gold mines. So he buys this gold mine from this Jehovah's Witness fellow that I had this little argument with, you might not, as observation, where he said God's in control of everything. Well, he's asking this Jehovah's Witness fellow, who could I trust to fly my gold from my mine here back to Fairbanks, Alaska? Well, 25 years later, just because of my little argument that I had with this Jehovah's Witness guy about David and Goliath, he remembered me, and my name and phone number was still on his little bulletin board. So he told, 25 years later, he told the Chinaman, Tony Apui, who I'd never met yet, if you can get a hold of this guy, he said, I don't know if he's still got the same phone number, if he's still living or he's still in Alaska, I don't know. But I was. And the Chinaman called me up and said, I need you to stop by. I want to talk to you about flying my gold. Well, I fly right over top of his mine on the way to Eskimo land anyway, so next time I went to fly missionaries in Eskimo land, I stopped there and talked to him. And he said, I need somebody to fly my gold from here back to Fairbanks. Can you stop here when you're flying your missionaries over there to Eskimo land and just stop here? And I said, okay, I'll be glad to do that. He said, I'll pay you $300 every time you land here, to take my gold to town. I said, okay, it's getting better and better every time. Just keep that up. So we joked about that a little bit. So I started doing that, like I'd say maybe once a month. When I'd fly missionaries there and coming back, I'd land there and pick up his gold, take it to Fairbanks. And I would wear a 44 mag pistol in my shoulder holster, and I'd have an AR-15 in my hand when I exited the airplane to protect his gold. Now, I'm flying an average of 8 5-gallon buckets that probably weigh over 100 pounds each. The lid is locked on tight. I don't know how much, but it doesn't take much gold to make 100 pounds. It's 8 times heavier than any other rock on Earth. So I'm flying his gold back to Fairbanks, and he's really appreciative of it. And so after I did that for a while for him, didn't know skin off my back, and he then one time said to me and the wife, "I'm going to Costa Rica to visit my relatives. Would you be my guest? I'll pay all your expenses to go and come." Man, middle of winter in Fairbanks, you got 3 hours and 42 minutes of daylight. I'm going to get a week off and go to Costa Rica where the sun shines, all that stuff. I'm on it. Let's go. So we went there, and the second year he took us there again. Said, "You be my guest again." This time he went for 10 days, all expense paid for me and the wife. This time we went there, and he said, "I'm going to go visit my relatives, and you just get a taxi, go in town, and look the sights over in the capital city." So we called a taxi cab that the hotel had that was owned by one of his relatives, by the way. And the taxi cab driver who spoke English could not come. He was busy with something else. So they called another taxi cab driver off the street. Lo and behold, he spoke English. And so I found out in the first 5 minutes he was a Christian. And he goes to this church in Spanish. I didn't understand what that meant. And so I said, "Listen, it's Wednesday night and all that. Does your church have services on Wednesday night?" He said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "We do." He said, "We have 3 church services on Sunday morning. We have one on Sunday night, and we have one on Wednesday night, and another church service on Thursday night." I said, "Okay. What's the name of your church?" Another big old long name in Spanish. I didn't know what it meant. I said, "Can you pick us up, take us to church with you tonight, Wednesday night?" "Yeah, sure, I'll do that. I'm going. I'm part of their mission team." "Okay." So we go there, and big church, about this size, really. It'll hold 800 people. I don't know how many seats you got here. Probably not quite that many, huh? But it'll seat 800 people. And it's almost full, and the guy that's a pastor is a black man. All the rest of them are Spanish-speaking, Costa Rican, dark tan-skinned people. And so this is a unique place. It's a little different. The preacher is a very sophisticated individual, been to a lot of school and so on like that. He's a very dedicated preacher, but he's speaking in Spanish too. And so we sat way in the back, and our taxi driver that brought us there interpreted the whole service to us. And so after the service was over, and we were introduced as guests here in the country and so on like that, but missionaries to Alaska. Immediately after the service was over, we were surrounded by a whole group of people. Now, come to find out, there's a group of Indians that are not Costa Rican. They don't claim any citizenship anywhere in this world. They're 7 days' walk from the nearest road in the jungle on the rainforest side of Costa Rica. There's 2 sides to Costa Rica, a drier side and a rainforest side, and a big more mountains in the middle that divides this. And they, as a group for 20 years, had been every month, a team of about 7 or 8 people every month from that church would get in a car or a truck and drive 3.5 hours to the end of the road. Then they would walk 7 days through the jungle to get to these Indians. Then they would live with them and evangelize them and preach to them and so on for 2 weeks. And then they would spend a whole week getting back home. So they take a whole month out of their life, and they had different teams in that church that would do that. And so this group of people surrounded me. They just went around us, and like we couldn't even get through them to get away. And they said, "We have been walking into this place for 20 years. You say you're an airplane driver? Yeah. They said, well, you must be the man. God sent you here for some reason. So they told us about the Quebecer Indians that were way back there in the rainforest. And walking 7 days in there for 20 years was wearing them out. And they're running out of people that want to do this. And so they're relatively desperate. So I said, okay, at the very least, what we'll do is I will rent an airplane here if I can at the airport, and I'll take some of you with me, and we're going to fly over that jungle area and find these Indians and see if there's any place I can land an airplane. So you saw a little brief thing, at least it showed the picture of the airplane landing amongst them. I can make that flight in 25 minutes instead of 7 days walk. Okay? That's a huge difference, okay? So now it becomes practical to reach these people for Christ. So they, when that all happened and we made contact with those Indians way back in the bush there, they were all over me to get back. So anyway, Tony the Chinaman that bought that mine from the Jehovah's Witness fellow, he said to me one day, he said, Les, I'm going to be going around Costa Rica. He's my age. He's about retirement age pretty soon. He said, I want to find a piece of ground here that I can settle down to retire someday. Okay, Tony, we'd be glad to travel the country with you. He had already rented a nice car, and here we go. So we go all over the place, and he finally finds a place that he likes. We like it also, because it's one of the nicest places in all of Costa Rica. And he said, this is the place. So Tony, plops down almost $1 million and buys the place. And then he says, okay, Les and Jane, my wife's name is Jane. He said, Les and Jane, why don't you come here and build a church here? Okay, Tony, we can do it. Now, Tony's not a Christian, but he respects us enough that whenever we go to a restaurant with some of his guests or something, he will stop everything and say, now Les is going to say a blessing on the food. And he'll stop the whole proceeding. He's not a believer, the Chinaman Tony. So he lost his wife in a one-car accident. It was her fault, and he still blames God for that. He's still trying to get over that problem. And so we're working with him on it slowly, but he's an intellectual fellow. He's a very smart guy, and he tries to figure things out big time, okay? And so anyway, we wound up, we're now in Costa Rica at a beautiful place where he is, that he bought, and he's now turned that whole property over to us for church work. He's got one little corner of it there, even though it's in our name. He's got one little corner that he's made us promise we'd keep for him, build a house someday when he gets so old he can't walk, and he'll come there and settle down. But Tony was the reason we wound up going to Costa Rica. And then a gentleman in Alaska who came there to be a missionary heard about this thing, and he had just come up there with an airplane on a trailer with the wings off of it. And I didn't know him from Adam when he first came up there. We met, and I said, listen, where are you going to put the wings on your plane and, get it all ready to go? He said, I don't know, I'll just do it outside, I guess. I said, here's an airplane hangar that Pensacola Christian College built for us. You bring your airplane over here and put it in my hangar, and you can work on it. Here's the keys to the hangar. So he did that and put the airplane all back together over a period of time, got it A number 1 shape, and then he heard about the Indian thing here in Costa Rica, where we were. And so he had me to breakfast one day, and he said, Brother Les, he said, even though I came here to be a missionary pilot, he said, I'll work something else out in that regards. He said, but the airplane I have here is perfect for that bush work over there. Had tires that are 39 inches tall on a little airplane. I can land that airplane on rocks the size of basketballs. Literally, I can land that airplane on rocks the size of a basketball. So he said, here's the keys to the airplane. You take it to Costa Rica. So that was an amazing thing right there. So he not only bought me breakfast over that day, but he gave us that airplane for Costa Rica, and about 3 weeks later, I was in that plane and flying it all the way from Alaska down to Costa Rica. Took us about 65 hours to fly it down there. So it's in Costa Rica, and the Quebec Our Ministry is getting off the ground, and we'll see where that goes here in the future. Meantime, though, Tony buys this gorgeous place with a whole bunch of buildings on it, and it's one of the nicest places in Costa Rica. And it's got like 90 mango trees on the place and like 15 other fruit-producing trees and things like that. It's like a Disney World almost. It's absolutely gorgeous, beautiful place. And so he turned that whole place over to us for the ministry. And so now we're developing that. So what we're doing in Costa Rica right now is we already have a church established there. I have a BIMI missionary that's there, Baptist International Mission Incorporated. He's there full-time on the property. He has his own office on the property. We gave him one of the buildings for his office. And we converted an old horse barn. I wish we could have seen the pictures. I just despise technology sometimes, folks. It just doesn't work half the time. You know, we put that thing on a jump drive and now it won't show. What's that all about? You know? So somebody's neck's going to roll. Somebody's head's going to roll when I get out of here, because I wanted to show you that thing. And whoever put that jump drive together for me didn't do it right, okay? That picture you saw of the airplane flying in there was supposed to be right in the middle of all that, or the last, you know, and all that. So anyways, I'm not a technology lover at all. I'm a hands-on kind of a guy. Give me a hammer and that kind of thing, and I'll put something together that way. But Tony gave us a beautiful property there, and now there's we converted an old horse barn into a beautiful church. And there's this missionary is the pastor there now. It's a beautiful, developed church. And we're going to build now, it looks like we're going to be building a school for missionaries. You see, the new crop of missionaries that are coming up to us in America are technology gurus. They know how to run a smartphone and they know how to run a computer, but that's all they know. When it comes to pounding nails and doing practical things, they've never touched a wheelbarrow. Okay? They've never they never changed a battery in their car. They've never done nothing. And it's a practical value. Okay? So we're putting a school together there, and it's going to cover all the basics. It's going to be, you know, mechanic stuff, carpentry stuff, welding stuff. It's going to cover a lot of different subject matter to make these missionaries self-sufficient, how to make a clean water system and so on. And so we have teachers there and all that kind of thing. Now, there's pictures of what's it doing, showing pictures now? He got it working? We got a technology guru back there. Okay, is there a way to get it back to some of the first pictures? That's a picture of a church. Now, hold on for a minute there. This church it's right on the border of this Indian country, the Quebec Our Indians. And a rancher, he's the largest rancher in Costa Rica. He owns multi-million-dollar worth of stuff. He gave us this Catholic church. He kicked the Catholics out and gave us this church. It'll seat about 1,000 people. Now I have a full-time missionary couple that just came there about 3 weeks ago. They're getting settled in. She was raised there, and she speaks Spanish fluently, which is their language for the country. And this is a beautiful, beautiful church. And they gave us that church for the work there at Quebec. He also built us a gorgeous runway here so we could land the airplane right here where the Quebec Our Indians are. And so we're going to go back there and minister in that way. Next picture, maybe. Can you flip it to the next one? That's just the inside of the church when it's empty, because see, that's a Catholic thing or something there in the foreground. But he's got all the chairs for that church and everything. Next picture. On our way there one day, going by horseback, the rancher's horses, we had some wild boars that ran out in front of us. Now, horses and wild boars don't mix up together, so I was doing the rodeo dance for a while myself. And I'm not a rodeo clown, really, but that hog walked right out and started, trying to attack our horses, and the horses are jumping all over the place, but we managed to get through that. And so we went up to meet some of these Quebecer Indians that are inaccessible, 7 days walk from the nearest road. We flew to the rancher's place, and then we went on horseback, and we went up high in the mountains where some of these guys are, some of these Indians are. And it's there where we're going to take these missionaries. They're going to build some new runways for us and so on, and then we're going to service these missionaries with the plane. If we could have another picture. That's where the Quebecer Indians live there. See, some of those old buildings like that. It's pretty primitive. Next picture. We're running out of time. A lot of wildlife there. It's just one of those big old parrots. Next picture. There's the road, and it ends right there at the rancher's place. And he built this nice runway. Next picture. Flying over some of that jungle in Costa Rica. You see which way the wind blowing by looking at the smoke, because it's important to know how to land an airplane based on which way the wind blowing. Next picture. You can land on a gravel bar like that. See the river there? See that sand? I can land on that gravel bar, wade across the river, and then there's a village of Quebecers there. Next picture. A couple of Christmases ago, I got 2 airplane loads of toys for the Quebecer children, and went in there at Christmas time and took all the seats out of the plane and just jammed toys from the back of the airplane all the way to the roof, right underneath the co-pilot's feet and everything, and took them in there. And these kids had never been treated so nice, but it opened up a lot of doors to the Quebecer Indians by taking care of their kids. Next picture. We converted this old horse barn into a most gorgeous church now. You wouldn't believe what it looks like now. This is an old horse barn that was on that ranch there where our main compound is. Next picture. Here they are rejuvenating it, putting it together, making a church out of it, the old horse barn. Next picture. Here's one of the guys in the church, Costa Rican fella. He's putting the ceiling up, making it nice. Next picture. There we are having a service in that old horse barn church. Doesn't look like a horse barn much anymore, does it? Next picture. We baptized in a swimming pool that's on the property. And I don't know, we baptized quite a few folk there now, probably 30 of them or so. Next picture. We have some of the grounds. This is a very small part of the grounds, but we have youth camps there and things like that on the property, and so here some of the kids are staying in some of their tents and so on. Next picture. Little airplane landing there in the horse pasture. See that horse that's just to the left of the propeller? If you don't think it's a little bit tricky landing amongst a bunch of dumb horses, you've never experienced dumb horses. But I have to interpret. I was raised on a farm with horses, and I know what they do, basically. I know how unpredictable they are sometimes. But if they have their nose pointed this way and I'm going to be landing behind them, I might be okay. In other words, I know how to interpret horse language a little bit, but I'm not a true horse whisperer either. Anyways, we landed there in that airplane. See those big old tires on that plane? That big old tires allow me to land on really rough, ugly stuff. Next picture. Okay. Next one. Okay. Well, you got to see some of the pictures of that thing, and so we plan on going there, and our ministries will be to the Quebecer Indians. It'll be to the church that's in the other part of Costa Rica, at the place that the Costa Rican from China bought for us. And then we're going to have that school to train missionaries that are going anywhere in the world to do practical things. They don't know how to dig a well. They don't know how to weld. They don't know how to sharpen an axe. A lot of these missionaries have been to Bible school, come out and say, okay, we're ready to go to Bible, ready to go to the world. No, you're not. I can prove to you in 5 minutes you don't know nothing. Because when you get there, you have to do practical things. If you can't sharpen a machete when you're out there in the forest, and you don't know how to sharpen an axe, you ain't going to survive there. You're going to die there. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to go there for about 1 year, maybe 4 at the most. You're going to come home with your tail between your legs and you're not going back. And that's happening with a whole lot of missionaries these days because none of the fundamental Baptist mission boards have a practical school to where they send their students to a practical school where they learn how to do all kinds of practical things. They come out of Bible college and shoo, they send them out. So we're going to put them through a school there where they learn all kinds of mechanic stuff. They don't have to be professionals, but they have to know basics. They got to know how to change oil in your car by yourself. You got to have a lawnmower. You got to know how to sharpen the blade on the lawnmower with a file. They've never done that in their life. They've never taken the blade off the lawnmower. They don't even know how to check oil on the lawnmower, some of them. So we have a school for that there in Costa Rica. And we're just teaching them a whole lot of practical things. A missionary has to know how to do a lot of practical things to stay alive and to be able to teach the people about their spiritual need of Christ as well. You have to do a lot of things for them. So we'll just shut that screen off if you want. It's okay. We've seen what you need to see there. But in the chain of events in my life, I run these past you very quickly and then maybe open it up for questions if there's any time. My dad took me to Africa when I was 2 years old, and I spent 17 years there altogether. And while I was there, in 1980, from 1946 till 1980, me and my dad and them were all there. And then in 1980, they had a revolution in Liberia, West Africa, a coup, you might say. And they killed the president and his wife and all their congressmen and senators. They all lined them up and shot them all. And so now the country is in total turmoil. Nobody's in charge. We got out 2 weeks before all that happened, but all of our personal belongings, I mean family pictures and all that stuff, were completely inaccessible after that coup. You could not go back to the country to even pick up any mementos that you might cherish. Then 25 years passed, and we decided to go to Alaska. The Lord led us into Alaska after Liberia, West Africa closed to us. And we went to Alaska with an airplane that my uncle donated to us at that time. I've had like 8 airplanes donated to us that we never asked for, never prayed for, nothing. People just saw what we were doing in the ministry, and they donated these airplanes out of the blue. Never asked for one, never said nothing about it in the message, nothing. But we've had like 8 airplanes donated over time. Each one of them is in the ministry in some way at this point. I'm airplaneless right now because I gave away the last airplane. And what we've done now with this airplane you saw in the picture, we found a Christian Costa Rican pilot that's an airline pilot. He's 30 years old. He's a concert pianist. He's been to 4 years of Bible college, as well as other college. His mom is a Supreme Court, well, she just retired as a Supreme Court justice in Costa Rica. His dad is a skyscraper builder. Approximately 1 week ago, this young man who was going to be our new pilot for that ministry in that airplane you just saw, a full-time missionary pilot, died on us in Costa Rica. He got sick and died in 3 days. And so now we're looking for another pilot. I may have to train somebody else. I don't know what the story, what's going to end up being, but that's a matter of serious prayer for you guys. Help us pray for another pilot. Of course, it's better. Like he spoke English just like we do. And he's been to Bible college. And he was going to be a full-time missionary pilot with us. He was. And we had already checked him out and all ready to go and everything. And then just about a week ago, he got bad sick and he went to the hospital and died 3 days later. You pray that we'll be able to find another pilot of his caliber, because he spoke Spanish fluently just like them, and he knew all about the Quebecer Indians, which is the tribe of Indians that are 7 days walk from the nearest road I told you about. And so this fella passed away on us about a week ago. And that's a really bad deal. I mean, from a human standpoint, it's a really bad deal for us because, you know, he went to Bible college and that whole thing, and he was a perfect man for the job. He's an airline pilot, giving that up in order to be a missionary pilot. So God knows what that's all about, but I don't. But the airplane is there, and what I'm trying to do is pass this off to much younger people, let them do the thing, see? And so here this guy, he was 30 years old, you know, and just in his prime and raring to go, and now he's passed away. See, what happened with him health-wise? He contracted some kind of a thing that destroyed his lungs, some kind of fungus or something that destroyed his lungs. You can get all kinds of strange things in the rainforest, folks, so you need to pray for your missionaries that are in the rainforest. The rainforest harbors all kinds of poisonous and nasty critters and things. Poison frogs, poison snakes, poison all kinds of things. And so you pray that we get another pilot real soon. So anyway, the Chinaman has been a serious help to us, and he got us a beautiful property there. So all that property, we are going to do basically 5 areas of ministry. There's already a church there. There's the airplane ministry to the Quebecer Indians. And then there's going to be a missionary school there to teach them how to do all these practical things. And then we have youth camps and so on like that. And there's a 5th one that I'm forgetting about right now. What's that? Yeah, we have a retreat thing there to where missionaries from all over Central America come there for R&R, because it's a very nice place that Tony the Chinaman got for us over there, and they can come there and relax. But so fundamental Baptist missionaries from all of Central America come there for R&R. And local churches in the area come there on a constant basis with their young people to do different things on the property that the Chinaman got us. And so you pray that that'll continue to blossom and grow. But we'll have 5 major areas of ministry on that property alone that we have going right now. We have, I put one newsletter out about, I don't know, a month ago or something. Can't remember. And in that newsletter, I said that I had a Christian contractor in Costa Rica who builds buildings for a living. And he said he would build us a 70-foot wide, 100-foot long building with a concrete floor and driveway and everything else, level the dirt out, move all the stumps, put electricity to it, plug-ins everywhere, but it's an open building for this school for missionaries. You know, the practical school, learn how to, they don't even know how to sharpen an axe. A lot of these kids today, they don't even know what a file is. They don't know how to properly use a welder. They don't know how to properly run a generator for electric lights or nothing. They don't know any practical thing. They don't know. They went to school. They learned how to run a computer and play games on a computer and stuff like that, but that's all they know. So this school is a practical school to teach missionaries how to do practical things, which is all they're going to be doing when they get to the mission field. These people that are in the woods are not technologically oriented people. I can guarantee you that. They're not technologically oriented people. And so you have to come to their level, and you have to know how to sharpen an axe. You have to know how to operate a machete, how to sharpen one, how to take care of one, and so on. You also have to be a little bit of a doctor. You have to know how to fix wounds, all kinds of things like that. You might have to know how to handle a snake bite, because they get snake bit. But now that the airplane will be going in there in some of the places, some of those victims will be flown out as snake bite victims to a doctor in San Jose, the capital city of Costa Rica, and their life will be saved because of the airplane and because of this airport that's there. Anyway, that's all developing as we speak. Trying to shorten this up because we're going to run out of time. I showed you a picture of the church that the rancher gave us We don't even have to build a church among the Quebecer Indians. The church is already there, and it's been already given to us by this rancher. And he himself is not a saved man. But when I talk to him about all this stuff, he says, well, you got all these religions in the world, which one is right? He says, I think they all have something good to give us in the world. That's his attitude of it, And so we're still working with this rancher, but he's generous enough to give us this beautiful church on his property. And what's happened now is the Costa Rican government is giving a little welfare check. They're giving like $100 a month to these Indian families that are way back in the bush. So they'll ride their horse 7 days through the jungle to come to this ranch, because that's where they dole out their little welfare checks. So all these Indians come to this church right here, and they park their horses outside this church. They tie them up to the trees, and then we have church services for them. They camp out there overnight. We let them camp out in the church, and so they eat in the church, they camp out in the church, their horses are in the pasture that belongs to the rancher, and then we evangelize them that way. But they come there to get that check from the government. And so our mission field comes to us in that way. You pray that as we develop this school for missionaries, and we've informed other mission agencies what we've got here, and they're all appreciating the fact that there's a new school to go to. So pray for us as we go to the Quebecer Indians, as we do that ministry amongst, the Costa Rican people are not part of that Indian group in the rainforest. They're totally two separate entities. I don't want you to get confused about that. So we have a church already planted with a full-time missionary from BIMI pastoring that group of people on this property you saw here. The work to the Indians is a brand new couple that have just come there, but they've been there about 3 weeks now. They're going to live with the Quebecers right near where this ranch is, where this rancher lives amongst the Quebecer Indians, right on the border of where they are. So right now we're putting that ministry together with this young couple. They have 2 little children, and the man's wife was born and raised in Costa Rica. She speaks Spanish just like they do. He has to learn all that. But bottom line is, you pray for that brand new ministry that's going together there. So the airplane makes a big difference over there, and they're going to be going to those people. We'll be supporting those missionaries with the airplane probably almost every week, going in there with a trip. But now we have to find another pilot. I mean, I can fly the airplane, but I want to find a younger guy that can do this for the next 30 years. That's the whole point of this thing. You replace yourself with another Timothy, you see? So that's where we're at with this thing. I'm looking for a younger pilot. You pray for that specifically, that God will give us another younger pilot that can just move in there and fly that airplane. He does not have to know Spanish. This young man that we had was born and raised in Costa Rica. His mom and dad lived there. He had all his support. He had a place to live. He was very familiar with the airport. He managed to get a hangar to park the airplane in. This young man did a lot of stuff for us. Now we're starting on ground zero again, so you pray that we can manage this thing with this airplane, this new airplane ministry that's going there. There's a possibility of a Bible college in the future on our property for those people. It's probably more than a possibility. We're putting it together right now. There's a Bible college in Texas that minister to the Mexican people who Spanish also. It's Spanish over there. They put an entire 4-year Bible college program and a 2-year graduate program all in Spanish on DVD. And they have given me that entire course on DVD. So now I don't have to have housing professors. I don't have to have salaries for professors. All I have to do is have students put up the screen, turn it on, and they've got a Bible college. So we're going to be doing that ministry here in the future. And we'll have several students, I'm sure, that, but they can go to work during the day, they come there at night, they spend 4 hours at night there in Bible college situation, go back home, go to work the next day and do this thing. And then when they graduate, they're ready to go to their own people as a graduated Bible college student. All right. Well, are there any questions before we shut this thing down? What's that? How many souls do you have access to? How many numbers of people are you talking about in the rainforest? They say that there's about 12,000 of those Indians in the rainforest. And, I think there's something like 4 million people in Costa Rica total. So there's enough work there for several missionaries to do this thing. But it's a very primitive work amongst the Indians in the rainforest. I'm telling you, it takes a certain kind of missionary to be able to do that. Okay? I did that in Africa when I was there, so it's nothing for me to live like that and be with those people. But some of the newer missionaries that know smartphones and they know computers, but they've never lived in a tent, they've never killed a snake, they've never killed a rat, they've never made a crude house, they've never gone to an outhouse to use the restroom. These people have to be trained. They have to go through a certain amount of this in order to make it. Yes, sir. Another question of some kind.
If they get a $100 check, from the government, what do they do with their money? I guess there's some kind of trader or something.
They'll go to a store that's a Costa Rican-owned store that's about 20 miles down the road. They'll get a taxi cab, so-called, that's there. They're real cheap. There are taxi cabs everywhere. They'll go down to that store and they'll buy a new machete. They'll buy a few goods and things. They'll buy booze, too. Wherever there's an Indian, there's booze. Okay? So their contact with the Costa Rican people themselves and the Costa Rican government, in my opinion, is not good. Just like our contact with the American Indian is not good. Okay? The whole situation, the American Indian, I won't get into that, but that's another whole story. One more question, then we'll cut her off and let her go. Anybody on this side have a question? You corner me afterward if you'd like, or by the way, if you would like to receive our newsletter to your house, giving you information on how we're doing and everything, and how this is progressing, preacher, can they just sign their name on this if they wanted to? Okay. Why don't do you mind if you just pass that around, let it go from row to row? You don't have to sign up, you don't want to, but if you'd like to get a newsletter free of charge to your house, you keep track of this ministry through letters. There's another one there, it's the second one too. I'll pass it on. Thank you folks for your time and your help and support.
I find it very amazing. He spent 17 years in Africa, 36, was it, years in Alaska, and now in Costa Rica. And this guy missions has been his life, right? And he's been a missionary of ours for many, many years. And so we're glad that he's now in Costa Rica, and I am looking forward to maybe going there sometime. Where he's at, they say, they being like the AARP and certain retirement type of magazines, says that where he is at is the #1 place in the world to live at, destination. Best weather. Best weather. No need for air conditioning. There is very little to zero bugs. Like Becca would love this. She would love this. No bugs, and it's warm all the time. And so, but God is putting there, and all these things, the church, the Bible college. I really like the vocational thing because I know there's a lot of our missionaries that go to modernized cities, but there are some that are in not so modernized places that it is really good for them to learn these things. And so I'm really glad that we support his ministry, and we're looking forward to going down there and spending some time down there this year. So with that, I'm going to pray, and then if we could have a couple of guys take care of the offering, and you can be dismissed out after this. The offering will be for Brother Zerbe, and just take care of his expenses. He's traveling from here going to North Carolina tomorrow morning. He gets up early, like 4 o'clock. Like crazy people do that, right? But he'll probably be on the road before 5 and getting to his destination, and then on to Florida from there before going back to Costa Rica. And so anything we can do to help him financially with his trip, we definitely will want to do that, okay? So let me pray, and then we may be dismissed after the offering. Father, we just thank you for Brother Zerbe, his ministry, his work, his wonderful wife, Jane. Lord, just watch over her while he's here, excuse me. And Lord, I pray that you would just continue to bless the ministry. Thank you for the financial gifts you've given them. Lord, may that continue, and may they continue to see many people won for Jesus Christ. We say all of this in the name of Jesus. Amen. All right, if somebody can help me with the offering, John or Dick, if you can help me with the offering there, that would be great. And then once that passed, you may be dismissed. Thank you all very much.